Melanin is a neurochemical that is produced in part through the pituitary and the pineal gland. They both play a central role in the production of melanin, which is ultimately responsible for the color that we have in our skin. Now, historically, it had always been thought that melanin played a significant role in the intellectual propensity of African people. For example, when you study some of the Greek writings on melanin or the color of Africans, many of the Greek philosophers believed that melanin played some sort of a role in how Africans had been able to create and develop some of the sciences that they had come to be known for. So melanin was always considered an intellectual sort of a chemical.
The pineal gland, which produces melanin, it's shaped like a pine cone. And the origin of the word pineal literally means resembling a pine cone. Now, in ancient symbolisms, the pine cone has always been represented because people knew the importance of the pineal gland as it related to melanin and the universe.
Melanin is a molecule, and the concept of melanin is, it is black in its nature, and we find it in the cosmos, we find it in the heavens, we find it in water, we find it in land, we find it in everything that exists.
The sperm of the male and the egg of the woman, they're both layered with melanin, so that when the sperm penetrates the egg, there is a melanin explosion. And that melanin helps to formulate the fetus within that egg. And that fetus is literally coated with the melanin substance. And that melanin substance then goes on to form the brain and the central nervous system. So every human being begins with a melanin explosion.
Melanin is an intelligence. It's an intelligence because it is the primary dynamic in every part of the cell. It's a primary dynamic in the core of the human being as well as to the surface of the human being. Its intelligence is responsible for the forming of the nervous system. Every part of the nervous system has these little black dots all through it, which essentially carry information.
So melanin, from a physical standpoint, is that substance that accounts for what black people refer to as soul. We move differently, we walk differently, we talk differently because we have access to a different form of energy than other folk.
Not only is melanin a pigment, which is so obvious, but melanin as an intelligence is a communications module that essentially broadcasts as well as receives information by way of light and sound frequency signatures.
Scholars and scientists have been having conferences about melanin, to my awareness, at least since the 1920s.
The pineal glands of most of our white brothers and sisters are calcified, and so they make less melanin. And that comes from the historical relationship to what we call the Permian Ice Age, that 10,000 years of glacial freezing that happened in Europe after the Africans who were the Grimaldi moved up there. And so it became the survival of the fittest. Who was able to adapt could survive. Who wasn't able to adapt died. So those people who were able to get rid of their melanin was able to survive. Those who could not get rid of the melanin, they died.
These scientists said that the pineal gland, they refer to the pineal gland as a vestigial organ, that is a calcified gland within the body that served no purpose, as if the creator would create something that you didn't need. And it was only after the Vietnam War, in the late 60s and early 70s, that they began to rewrite their interpretation of the pineal gland. The reason for that was that a large number of African Americans fought and died during the Vietnam War. And whenever a soldier dies, there's an autopsy that's performed before their body is sent back to Dover Air Force Base. And what they discovered, what these physicians discovered, is that when they performed the autopsies, that 75 to 80% of the African American soldiers had a large functioning pineal gland. The pineal gland is normally about the size of your thumb. So it was not a vestigial organ, in 70 to 80% of African Americans, but it is a calcified organ in 75 to 80% of people with European ancestry. So they begin to reevaluate the pineal gland. They begin to reevaluate melanin.
I think if you talk to Dr. Welsing, she'll tell you this is about genetic annihilation or genetic survival, okay? It's about genetics. Who will survive America? Who will survive the world? Whose genetics will hold up? What is going to be the genotype that's on the planet 1,000 years from now? Will it be white? Will it be brown? Will it be black? And so you find that the elements of the human family that find themselves suffering from the ecology that we're in, they're struggling to survive and to be able to maintain themselves. All nations, European nations and America, white Americans, are at minus birth rate right now. Not zero birth rate, where they're keeping up with the natural death. They're at minus birth rate. And so that's why there's so much emphasis on artificial birth creation and other ways to have babies and make babies that are beyond the normal. And you'll also find that this adopting black babies, the Haiti thing, getting the children out of the Central African Republic and Chad, adopting Filipino babies, Latino babies by the white community on such a high level, it is to infuse their gene pool with the melanin.
A few years ago, the president of Chad, a man by the name of Idris Deby, he had a group of French charity workers arrested after it was found out that they were kidnapping children from that area. Now, Deby accused them of stealing the children from their parents and planning to sell the children to pedophile rings up in Europe. He also accused them of possibly planning to kill the children to sell their organs. Now, this is the president of Chad saying this, and this was a big scandal with the Chadian government and the French government. So we need to understand everything that's going on with people going into Africa trying to get these children up out of here.
There's a war being waged on melanated people, and melanated people, people of color, should realize that a war is going on. A lot of melanated people do not realize that this war is going on, and this war is going on an educational front. There's a spiritual warfare, there's a medical warfare, there's a prison industrial warfare, and there's an economic warfare being imposed on people of color, especially in America.